My name is Marcus Reynolds. I'm 30 years old, and I served in the United States Army for almost 5 years, including a mission in Afghanistan. When I came back, I thought the war would be the hardest chapter of my life. I was wrong. It all started one summer morning when I decided to go on a solo hike in the Chattahoochee National Forest in Georgia to clear my head, get away from the ghosts of the battlefield. What I didn't expect was that in less than 72 hours, my struggle would turn into a different kind of war, one against nature itself, with a silent and deadly enemy crawling beneath the leaves: snakes. I prepared my basic gear: backpack with water, food, first aid kit, machete, and a pistol that had been with me since my military days, more for the sense of security than any real need. The day was hot, the typical southern heat, and the humidity made the air feel like a constant steam bath. By the first day, I noticed strange signs: animal tracks, but also trails of giant snakes, pythons that had apparently escaped from illegal breeders in the area. I had read about this before: these snakes invading territories, growing in size and number, becoming a nightmare for anyone venturing there. At night, while setting up camp by a creek, I heard the almost imperceptible sound of leaves being dragged, a faint, persistent rustling. I thought it was a small animal, maybe a raccoon or even an opossum, but it didn't take long for me to confirm the yellow eyes glowing in my lantern, eyes of huge pythons, hiding and attacking with terrifying speed. It wasn't just an ordinary invasion, it was a natural, brutal, and relentless trap. One early morning, I woke up to something squeezing my leg. I thought it was a falling branch, but the sensation felt wrong, sticky and cold. I woke up with my face pressed against the muddy ground when a giant snake slid over me, its cold skin burning me like fire. I barely escaped, but the bite marks soon reminded me that this was a fight for survival, not just for walking. As the hours passed, I realized I wasn't alone. Other adventurers had disappeared in the same area, and rumors of mysterious attacks spread through circulars on amateur radios and local groups. My gear pile seemed insufficient. The wilderness, once a refuge, had become a battleground full of these silent predators. Adrenaline kept me alive as I tried to find a safe way back to civilization. Each run through the woods carried the constant risk of encountering one of those hypnotizing snakes, their deadly stares and overwhelming strength that could bury me in a pit of roots and dirt. The 72 hours that turned my life upside down were a test of endurance and facing deep fears, much like the war around the world. But here, with no allies, hidden by trees and covered in shadows, I was fighting for something as essential as survival: my sanity. The hours blended into a heavy and endless sequence. With each step through the forest, the feeling of being watched deepened. The suffocating heat gave way to sticky humidity and darkness that seemed to have a life of its own. I knew I couldn't let my guard down. This nature didn't forgive, and the snakes were more than mere presences. They were silent, patient, and deadly hunters. During a break to hydrate near a fallen log, I heard the characteristic hiss that sent chills down my spine. I turned my head, and just a few meters away, a massive python was wrapping its muscular body around a bush, its gaze fixed, calculating my movements. My heart skipped. I drew the pistol, but I knew gunfire wouldn't be a solution against that heavy body and crushing strength. I continued moving carefully, feeling the damp ground covered in dry leaves that concealed considerable dangers. Every sound could be the prelude to an attack. At one point, I tripped and was quickly ensnared by a tight embrace. A snake at least 3 meters long grabbed my leg, beginning to squeeze. I pushed with all my strength, used the knife, felt the cold, hard scales pressing against my skin, the warm blood flowing from the wound. Fueled by adrenaline, I managed to break free, falling to the ground while swinging the machete, and ran like never before. But the damage was done, my leg throbbed, and I knew the fight was far from over. Further ahead, in the morning darkness, I found traces of other humans, clear signs that the stories weren't just legends. I stumbled upon an abandoned backpack with torn photos and yellowed letters, a true testimony of those who hadn't survived there. The worst came when, seeking shelter in a small cave, I realized I wasn't alone. The air grew heavy, with a smell mixing damp earth and something rotten. Shadows moved behind the entrance, and incomprehensible whispers echoed. I saw the reflected glow of yellow eyes, serpentine, rising in the gloom. There was no choice. The fight continued. The war I had faced far from the battlefields had finally revealed its full form, with an enemy that slithered, silenced, and patiently waited for its next victim. The darkness of the forest seemed to close in around me, taking over every sound, every shadow that the lantern light could barely reach. My body was exhausted. My injured leg throbbed with every step, but the will to live burned stronger than the pain. I knew those snakes weren't just animals. There was something strange, almost supernatural about the invasion, something that terrified even the local veterans. I moved slowly, trying to escape the rising fog, and was surprised by a whisper that seemed to come from the ground, a murmur carrying an ancient threat. My gaze caught a sudden movement, a huge snake, its scales glowing like burning charcoal, slithering silently, its forked tongue moving slowly, as if taunting me. Instinct screamed, "Run," but I couldn't anymore. I fell behind a fallen tree, holding my breath, listening to every crack, every breath of the woods. The snake approached, coiling, ready to strike. I knew that, even with the machete, I had little chance. Then I heard another sound, steady footsteps, muffled voices in the distance. Some other survivors appeared between the trees, armed and alert, and the snake's eyes glowed in warning. Those men were local hunters, specialized in capturing or eliminating the invasive pythons. Help had arrived, but the cost of rescue would be paid in blood and fear. As we fought together, moving between shadows and noises, we felt the forest transforming into a battlefield even more terrifying than any war I had ever faced. There, my fear mixed with the determination to live, for I knew that every second could be my last. The battle in the forest seemed endless. Surrounded by shadows moving with unsettling speed, the group that rescued me and I advanced carefully, listening to every sound, every rustle of leaves. The fear wasn't just for us, but for what that place hid among the trees, a primal terror that seemed to curse every step. As we crossed an open area, I heard a terrifying hiss from behind me. I turned and saw a massive python stretching its massive body toward me. The old soldier inside me reacted immediately. I fired the pistol, but the bullet merely scratched the scaly skin, making the monstrous creature even more enraged. I ran, feeling the weight of the wound in my leg and my heart almost exploding in my chest. Behind me, a snake pursued relentlessly, slithering fast even on uneven ground. Soon I realized I wasn't the only one. More yellow eyes appeared between the trees, and the forest became a labyrinth of imminent deaths. Our group tried to build an improvised barricade, using branches, stones, and fire, trying to keep the monsters at bay. It was a desperate struggle, a deadly game of cat and mouse between humans and these creatures that emerged from the darkest legends. Amidst the chaos, I recorded the horrors I faced in battle: explosions, gunfire, camaraderie forged in fear and survival. But there, in that snake-infested jungle, everything felt different. The enemies were silent, invisible, and their strength came from nature itself, killing without trace or mercy. When I finally saw the first rays of the sun piercing the fog, feeling the warmth of the clearing and hearing the first birdsong, I thought I would survive. The president's help arrived moments later, and I was rushed to the hospital. Today, with my body marked by wounds and my mind haunted by memories, I still wonder how many of these stories will be lost among the trees, with no witnesses. How many more will silently fight against the creeping terror of the forest? This experience showed me that sometimes the real war isn't in the battlefields, but in the daily fight to survive the darkness that awaits in our own backyard.